Gentlemen, we're going to start off with some trade expectations. And Jack, I understand you're going to talk a little bit about corn and U.S. wheat and rice numbers. So, Jack, why don't you kick us off?
Well, we'll start with the corn. Of course, the big numbers are going to be the changes that USDA makes to ending stocks. There's been a lot of talk about that they may make some changes to some of their yield calculations as well, which I don't really foresee. But we'll see exactly what they come out with tomorrow. The reason I don't think that USDA will make any modifications to their new crop corn yield estimates is we're just a month or so away from getting the first survey-based yield and production estimates from USDA anyway, and they might as well just wait until then. There's no doubt that we're enjoying some very good weather. Temperatures currently, at least here in Chicago, below normal, and a beautiful sunny day, but we've had a lot of areas that have also had quite a bit of rain, some excessive rain, mostly to the north of Chicago into Minnesota, western Wisconsin, actually eastern Wisconsin as well, and on into northern Iowa. And at least when I was taking a little 4th of July holiday last weekend, I was a little surprised at just how yellow the corn was looking up there. In Wisconsin, and I know that Minnesota and northern Iowa are pretty much in the same condition. Also, I saw a few more drowned out spots than I'm accustomed to seeing up there. So USDA is already dealing with a very aggressive yield estimate to begin with on the corn for the new crop, and I can see them just leaving that alone and making the acreage adjustments. And if that's the case, then you'll see perhaps just a little bit less production come out of USDA tomorrow based off of the reduced acreage, slightly lower than expected acreage that we saw at the end of last month. And that would imply perhaps a little bit less production in the coming year, assuming that the demand calculations stay roughly the same, which is probably okay. We could see the ending stocks come down just a little bit. Countering that, though, are the changes that we'll see to the old crop ending stocks, which, based off of the quarterly stocks report, probably implies that USDA will be safe in reducing their feed demand and increasing the ending stocks calculations for this year, which would, of course, flow right into the beginning stocks for next year. So you see an average trade guess right now for corn for the coming year of 1.773 billion bushels, and that's somewhere right around the 177 or 1775 is probably a pretty reasonable number to be dealing with because of all those factors. You also see, compared to last month, an increase in the old crop ending stocks estimates by the trade up to 1.225 billion bushels from 1.145 billion last month, and that's just once again encompassing the changes, encompassing what we saw from the quarterly stocks report, and probably a pretty reasonable report, looking at pretty reasonable estimates. So I would expect that USDA will probably be fairly close to the trade estimates for the domestic ending stocks estimates. The world ending stocks estimates likely to remain rather large because of the increase that we saw here in the U.S. quarterly stocks estimates. I don't expect any major surprises other than that in the world estimates for corn at all. And for next year, I think that there's going to be plenty of corn produced around the world. The average trade guess is 183.9 million tons of world stocks, and it could be at least that big. Real quick, over to the wheat production estimates. I think USDA will probably continue to trim their yield a little bit in the hard red winter, although I've been lately hearing that yields have been coming in Kansas a little better than expected. They could also perhaps cut a little bit of acreage from the spring wheat and cut a little bit of yield there. So we could see a slightly lower than expected wheat production estimate on the reports tomorrow.
Great, thanks, Jack. Jerry, I know you're going to take us through soybeans and international wheat numbers.
Yes,
Over to you.
thank you, Chris. Yes, the soybean numbers definitely the big number that came out from the USDA's quarterly stocks report and also acreage was the 3.3 million additional acres here. That particular number was about 2.5 million higher than the trade was kind of anticipating. Some of the acres that did not appear on the planned intentions this spring from some of the prevent plantings in the northern plains showed up with some increases in those Dakotas, Minnesota, Iowa areas that turned the tide there on the additional acres. From there, the stocks report also had a interesting twist where we had about a 27 million higher than average trade guesstimate in that category for the 1st of June. That prompted theories here of an underestimate of last year's crop. That particular situation is not uncommon, considering that we're dealing with a finite number of bushels and that type of thing, and about 3 billion or so of soybean bushels each year versus 12 and 13 billion worth of corn. The number, though, interestingly enough, 25 to 30 million is not an outrageously high number. I think even the trends we've seen in exports have shown that we're probably going to be above the USDA's current estimate of 1.6, and on our crush-it data, we're also showing some strong pushes there. Now, how does the USDA deal with a fact that we're going to probably have higher exports? We have maybe some more beans in our pocket. Usually that means they go to a negative residual. Now, that's kind of a bizarre thing to talk about, but that's the only way they can really put that in perspective here until we get a new adjusted number at the end of the year. So we're kind of looking for 25, 30 million there and kind of staying at that 125 million for old crop stocks on beans. So in that kind of scenario, that's a little complicated, a little bit convoluted, but that's how everyone's anticipating the USDA to deal with the statistics we have from June 1 on stocks. With those carrying those stocks over into new crop, along with the 3.3 million worth of additional acres here, and I go along with Jack with the idea that I don't sense the USDA is going to go ahead and make any adjustments on their yields. Their 45.3 bushels yield they're currently using is a new record level already. I think they'll go ahead and wait to see what August brings. That's really the month that really makes a big difference in beans. But even with that, with his additional acres, plus the fact that we also, earlier in the spring, it indicated we're going to do 4.9. So the reality is 8.8 million additional acres here, 8.3, I should say. And that total is going to push the USDA's carryover stock estimate. The trade average guesstimate's about 90 to 100 million higher than last month's 325 million number. I tend to be a little more conservative on that. I think there's going to be a little stronger demand levels out there that might pick that up. But in reality, the 400 million number here or thereabouts is going to be an adequate comparison to the current 125 million that we're dealing with for old crop right now. The international scenarios here on wheat, that's where the negativism's really kind of been hanging around in the world of the wheat market. They keep looking at pretty good crops in Europe. The scenario in Canada, they've reduced their acres up there, but still they've had some pretty good moisture levels this spring, like the northern plains has had. And there's been all spring here with all the controversy and issues going on in the Black Sea area, lots of strong attitudes that there's still going to be a crop out of there. So far, at least, it looks like they're going to have reasonable stocks, but there has been some dryness in Russia. And interestingly enough, the Egyptians have been buying some wheat from that area, but they've been buying it from Romania, not from either one in Ukraine or from the Russians. I'm not sure what that means. It's something to keep an eye on to see how that reacts, and then how this all blends together with our very short crop in the U.S. But right now, at least, the international attitude is adequate worldwide supplies.